It's time for another Dice Tower review with Tim Jennette.
Hey everyone, this is Tim Jennette the Metal Meeple. In this video, we're taking a look at an expansion for Ninja Dice called Kage Masters. Designed by Rocco Privatera, published by Greenbrier Games in 2015. It's for 2 to 5 players and it takes about 30 minutes. Same time frame, I believe, as the original. I'm not going to go over the rules of the original. I'm just going to show you what comes in the expansion and what the differences are. The main difference is you get 5 Kage Master dice. Each player gets one, so you're always in on it. You don't lose your threat die as you roll an hourglass now. You're always rolling, including on your own turn if you're the active player. So let me show you how everything plays and what you get in the expansion. Then we'll come back and I'll tell you what I think. So here are the components to Ninja Dice Kage Masters expansion. I'm not going to go over the original rules of the game, so if you want to check out my Ninja Dice review for the rules, please do so. Otherwise, if you've played the game, this will make a lot more sense. I'll just explain what it adds into the game and what it changes. So the first thing it changes, which is pretty big, are these threat die. Originally, each player gets a threat die, and you would roll it until it rolls an hourglass, and then you get rid of it, basically. So you didn't have a lot of chance to roll arrows to steal money, because if you were the first player to get a threat die and you lose it on the first roll of an hourglass, yeah, you can't get money stolen from you, but you can't steal money from each other as well. These are now essentially tokens. The Kage Master dice also have hourglasses, except for each, on these they would have 2 hourglasses. On the Kage Master dice, they only have 1 hourglass apiece. The reason for that is each player is going to roll their Kage Master die each turn, no matter who's rolling, including the active player. Again, the active player is the player with these white die trying to complete the stage. So you're always going to be involved every round. And on top of that, you have special ability, which matches the special ability on your card. So let me go over those real quick. The first one we have is the Assassin. The Assassin has the poison ability. When his icon's rolled here and he targets a guard dice, or I'm sorry, a house die, as long as it's a resident or a guard, he can immediately kill it, basically. He can poison it. And so he can lock, by putting one of these poison tokens over it, he can immediately collect the reward, which is pretty much worth 1, because each house die is worth 1. And then that's pretty much it. It's not worth any reward after that. It's really cool on your turn, because if you're the active player, you can eliminate some of these real quick. Otherwise, on other players' turns, you can eliminate them and steal the reward. Now, the difference is you do make it easier for the other players by killing their house dice, but you do get the money from it. So it makes it easier. It really only plays a big deal if you are using the location cards, and so you'll see why if you've never played with those. On top of that, before we move on to the other player, otherwise you can also count it as an arrow if you want. So if you're not targeting a guard die and you're pointing like this and all you have is like other dice, you can actually steal money from people still. On top of that, you have 3 abilities down here for this character. I think they all have different denominations of abilities down here. You can spend money to overlap one of these icons, and as long as a die that you rolled has this icon, you can immediately switch it to that side. So if you really want to roll a poison, but you happen to roll an arrow instead, you can spend $1, fully replacing this and switching this to whatever side, and you can orient it the way you want in the spot. Now you can only use these once, and obviously they cost a copper or 1 point to do so. So, moving on. The second character we have is the Firebrand. Much like the Assassin, he does similar things with tokens. He places a fire icon on a targeted house die. That house die has no reward, but they count as wilds on your turn. So, it's not as reward. He doesn't get the reward from players like the Assassin does, but he will burn that die, and you still have to complete it, but you're no longer going to get the reward. On your turn, you burn it, but it also counts as a wild instead. So if you put a fire on this one, it would basically count as 1 wild for the guards, but you would still have to get another guard to complete that die. On top of that, if somebody targets your die and you've rolled this fire, anyone targeting this die has to return a coin to the bank, which is really cool. So say your fire die is over here and somebody rolls like the chain shot guy and you're the only person he can target. This also counts as an arrow. Let's say it was somebody who rolled an arrow. He would have to return a coin to the bank, essentially losing $1, instead of stealing one from you. Or I guess he steals one from you, he returns one to the bank. So he doesn't get a net gain You see what I'm saying? Anyway, the chain specialist. He has two sides. He has 4 icons on his die. 2 of them are a little weaker because they are V formation or 45 degrees, so they target this way and this way. And he has 2 of them that actually target the whole horizon. But he can use it as a ×2 multiplier when saved with a targeted fight or hourglass. So on your turn, if you're the active ninja, you can target one of your fight icons that you rolled on here, essentially making it 2 points, or 2 fights. Or if another player had rolled an hourglass, you can target that and increase the time for that active player's turn. Otherwise, you can just count it as an arrow. You have special abilities. We have the spy, who's this gold die. It's a little harder to see down below though. If you roll the bribe and you target, you lock a coin onto a targeted house die. So, bam. And basically you can either double or halve the reward. Doubling is really cool on your turn because you can make it even worth more. On another player's turn, you can make it worth more or worth less. And the reason for that is because if they beat it, they round down. So if you made it worth half, you're essentially having the reward that player gets, but you don't get anything. Otherwise, you can make it double reward for them, and you get a normal amount for them. So anyway, or you can count it as an arrow. Finally, you have the trickster. The trickster is pretty much a mimic. He can target any other player's Kage die special, copy that ability, or you can re-roll a target hourglass, and you use the effects of the die rolled instead. Now, when the mimic targets something, say it target the bribe, he does have to use the bribe ability from where his die is. So the trickster has to be pointing at the die he wants to mimic and the die he wants to actually affect. So, pretty cool ability. So, other than that, you have a location deck. If you're not familiar with the location cards, they basically add a little bit cooler stuff, I think, to the game than the house dice. So, you're still going to roll these house dice, but instead you're going to take one of these cards. They have a 1, 2, or a 3. And obviously the game's played over 3 rounds. Each player gets a turn during the round. In this case, say you're playing a 3-player game. You flip out 3 cards plus 1, put the rest aside, and then this is what they're going to battle against. The first player is going to choose one of these cards to use or to fight instead of rolling the house dice. In this case, he's going to roll 1 house die, plus he has to complete these things. On this one, the better example here, 4 house dice. So you're going to roll 4 of these to generate. So in this case, it would be this, plus that die, and then this special ability, which applies for this round to you only. You have to protect the hostage. You can't use fight on residents. So you can't actually fight the residents if you roll them. But the difference between the locations and the original game you would get a bonus point for each round that you completed. So on the 3rd round, you would get 3 extra points or money or whatever. In this case, you don't get extras. You just get whatever the reward up is because you get to collect this card. Most of the time, you can see sometimes if it's a really hard card, even on the first round, you can get 4 plus 1, 2, 3, 4. You can get 8 coins essentially on the first round. Plus, you can still sneak if you want to and not fight and get additional. So these also have special abilities that you can spend money on as they're in front of you. So if you complete these and put one of these cards in front of you, you can change. These pretty much only affect the ninja dice that you roll, the white active dice, and you can switch them to one of those sides if you want to spend money to do so. After that, you're going to take the round, after each player has chosen one of those cards, you take that round 2, flip them out, so 4, and then in money order, whoever has the least money gets to pick the card and then go. So the turn order does change to benefit the player that has the least amount of money. That's pretty much it for the Kage expansion. Let's see what I think. And there you go, that's Ninja Dice Kage Masters, a very awesome expansion with some small little things that I will nitpick. One, the abilities are very hard to interpret, I think, the first time we read them. We played a couple of games where we were playing them wrong just because of the rules on the cards. I feel like the abilities should have been 2 paragraphs worth of text, but it condensed into 1, and it made it really difficult to interpret them. Hearing them probably in my description or read them online and the way people tell you to use them, it makes total sense. But if you never really researched this game and you just bust out the game, bought the expansion, and start reading them, you're kind of like, dude, the spy, I don't understand the spy, how it halves the money when you, I mean, it was just a really weird thing. And the other thing is like the firebrand and the assassin, people get confused on, do I still have to complete that die? Or why would I do it on somebody else's turn? or, like the firebrand where somebody targets you and they have to put one money back. It's like it's not immediately apparent that, they get a money from you but then put it back. So they don't get a net gain, but you still get stolen from. It was just some weird things like that. Now, I did read from Rocco that the FAQ is going to come out. That's going to solve all these problems, hopefully. I would assume they would. Once you know how to play the game, though, and you got all the rules to the expansion, it's phenomenal. I like that they keep everyone in it. You're rolling all the time. It's really cool. And there is another rules thing that I want to touch on is the chain specialist. Since you're rolling all the time, you're rolling hourglasses, normally you would lose your die and just get locked over here, but now it's you put a threat die in place of it and you get to keep rolling your die. Well, the chain specialist attaches to something, an hourglass. So do you attach to the token that's off to the side? We played it to where you basically only attach to the dice that's currently rolled that round. So if you all roll and somebody rolls an hourglass and you happen to be pointing that way, you can attach to it. Just little things like that. Now, I will say if you haven't played with the location cards before, phenomenal, must buy, I believe. It just dramatically changes the idea of the game. Well, not the idea of the game, but it dramatically changes the way the game's played. It's just, they are that awesome. And this one adds just enough to get a taste, but I feel like you would get bored with them after a couple plays, because in a 5-player game, you're using all of them each round. So adding them with the original locations adds a fat deck of location cards for you to fly through. Very, very cool. Last thing I have, I guess, is the special abilities. I don't remember what they're called, but on the location cards, the new ones, and the Kage Master cards, you can spend money to cover up one of those icons and switch a dice facing to that face. Pet peeve of mine, I don't really like to spend victory points to do that, and so we house rule it to where we don't. You spend a coin to put on it and you cover it up, but you still have that money available to you. It's not like money that goes away, although it can no longer be stolen. That's just, we're probably breaking the design in some way, some kind of balancing thing, but I feel like it just opens up a little bit more to you. You got this character that has special abilities, but you can't really use them unless you spend money. And so I didn't really like that so much, but that's, like I said, it's just a personal thing. It has nothing to do with the design. I bet it's totally fine as far as balancing and everything, but I just chose to house rule that after a couple plays just because I feel like I just want people to use those abilities all the time, or as many. They're limited anyway. Why would you need to spend money on them? So that's just a little thing. But if you played Ninja Dice, this is a good expansion, and it's probably an expansion you'll want to buy, but you don't want to introduce it to people for their first play. Probably let them play the original Ninja Dice 2 or 3 times before putting this in there, and make sure you have a clear understanding on how all of it works, and it'll run so much more smoothly than you were hoping it would. So anyway, very, very good expansion. I'm looking forward to more Ninja stuff. And there's more characters I think they have on their website as well that didn't come in the expansion. So if you have any questions, feel free to email me at timjennette@gmail.com. You can follow me on social media at the handle below. I've got a podcast called Meeple Core. You can look it on iTunes. It's also on YouTube. And until next time, keep on rocking and rolling dice.
Thanks so much for watching the Dice Tower videos. Find more great videos and reviews, as well as our top-rated audio podcast at Dicetower.com. You can also find other great shows at Dicetowernetwork.com. I'm Eric Summerer, and you've been watching The Dice Tower. The Dice Tower is sponsored by Cool Stuff Inc., where you can find great games for great prices. Cool stuff in stock. Check them out at CoolStuffInc.com.